Okay, let's get into the next church that we are looking at. The church at Philadelphia. I was thinking of bringing Philly cheesesteaks in for everybody tonight, but yeah, that'd be cool, wouldn't it? Talk about studying the Bible, that's the way to do it. Revelation chapter 3, verse 7. I think this is a different Philadelphia, though. Maybe. And to the angel of the church in Philadelphia write, These things saith he that is holy, he that is true, he that hath the key of David. Just a quick comment, when he mentions the key of David there, he's talking about authority, the authority of the king, and that's what he's going to finish up here with when he says, finish up the verse, He that openeth and no man shutteth, and shutteth and no man openeth. Sunday morning we're going to be talking a little bit about the sovereignty of God, and that verse fits so perfectly into studying the sovereignty of God, because he says, what God opens, no man can shut, and what God shuts, no man can open. He's talking about God's absolute power and sovereignty. And once God has declared a thing and made a thing occur, he's saying no man can stop it. And that brings a wonderful comfort and peace to us, to know that God is that much in charge. He that openeth and no man shutteth, and shutteth and no man openeth. And he's going to go on, and he's going to talk about a very special way that this sovereignty operates in our life. Look at verse 8. He says, I know thy works. Do you know those 4 words he speaks to every church? I know thy works. You know, it just is a really good reminder that we will be judged by everything we say and do. And not only will we be judged for the content, we will be judged for the motive of what we say and do. But that is one line there, those 4 words he says to every church. I know thy works. I see the motive of your heart. I see the reasons why you did what you did. And I see the reasons why, sometimes you do what appears to be good, but you do it for the wrong reason. He says, I know thy works. It's just a really good check for us in our own heart. Behold, I have set before thee an open door, and no man can shut it. And this is the reference back to verse 7, where he's talking about his sovereignty and absolute power, and that no man can thwart God's will. He says, and no man can shut it, for thou hast a little strength, and hast kept my word, and hast not denied my name. Now the precious thing about verse 8 is this. When he says thou hast little strength, he's saying you're weak right now. They might have been weak in faith. They might have been weak in strength. They might have been, he doesn't really say what they're weak in. But he says thou hast little strength, so they're in a weakened condition. And I want you to see the love and the care that God has for them in this condition. Sometimes we think that we always have to be strong. And if we're weak, or if we're a little fearful, or if we're nervous, or, we just don't want to have the courage to face what we have to face, sometimes we think there's something wrong with us or something wrong with our faith. And really, absolutely not. I want you to see in this passage, verse 8, and then we're going to take a look at another passage here in a moment. We all go through periods in our life where we have little strength. Maybe temptation is getting the upper hand over us. Maybe an emotion is controlling us too much. Maybe we're being oppressed and we're fearful about something. Maybe we're being troubled. Maybe we're going through a great time of warfare with evil spirits. And so we all go through times of little strength. And I want you to know here, and I want you to see from this passage, that God loves you. And he doesn't think any less of you. And he doesn't belittle you in any way when we go through these periods of having little strength. He says, for thou hast a little strength, and hast kept my word, and hast not denied my name. Which was quite a statement back then. Remember, in the midst of the persecution of the church in these days, whenever you were brought before a pagan king, or a pagan ruler, the first thing they would want you to do is denounce your faith and declare that king as your God, or declare their deity as your God. And he's saying here, you haven't done so, you haven't backed down, you haven't denied my name, but you're in a weakened condition right now, and he recognized that. And so he says here, I've set before thee an open door, and no man can shut it, for thou hast little strength. I want you to see this in light of 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13, where he says, there hath no temptation taken you, but such as is common to man. And he's trying to reassure you, a lot of times we go through things in our life, whether it be temptation or failure, or whether it be anger or doubt or fear, and he's trying to reassure your hearts. The Holy Spirit, through the Apostle Paul, is reassuring your hearts that you're not a freak. There's nothing wrong with you. Everybody goes through this. And so it's common to man, and because Jesus partook of human nature, he understands as well. And so it's common to man. God understands. You're not weird or a freak. Everybody goes through this. But God is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that ye are able. So when we go through trials in life, one of the greatest comforts of the sovereignty of God is that God is in control of that trial. One of the worst things, you go to an amusement park, and one of the things, what is it about those rides that scare you? What scares you about those rides is that you feel like you are out of control, right? And you don't know what's going to happen, and it's scary, and so being out of control is a very natural fear for us humans. And we don't like being out of control. And that's where our faith in Father really becomes so special and dear to us, because even when we are out of control, our Father is never out of control. And we have the assurance that absolutely nothing can happen to me outside of Father's control, because He's the God that when He shuts a door, no man can change it. When He opens the door, no man can change it. When He decrees a thing, when He's in control of our life, and He's in control of our life 24/7 for the rest of eternity, when He's in control of our life, nothing will happen to us that's outside of His control, outside of His immediate inspection. When you start talking about the omniscience of God and the omnipresence of God, and it's just mind-boggling, and as humans, again, we can't understand, what if some Christian over in China needs God at the very second I need God, and God's attention is over in China, and it's not on me? Well, the wonderful thing about omniscience and omnipresence is the fact that God is everywhere at once. And I have 100% of God's undivided attention at the exact same moment that that Christian in China has God's undivided and absolute attention. And so God, everything I do and say is under His immediate inspection. And anything that happens to me, every circumstance of my life is under God's immediate inspection. And that is the greatest, to me, that's one of the greatest comforts of His sovereignty, of knowing I am never out of His eyesight. I'm never outside of His earshot. And He will not suffer you to be tempted above that you are able. That means every trial that you pass through must first pass through God. And every trial you go through must first be tempered by His loving hands. And every trial you endure has been custom fitted to you. And it won't be above what you're able to bear. And we see that here with the Church of Philadelphia. No details are given. We don't know what this open door is. We don't know why they were in this weakened condition. But we do know one thing. Because they were in this weakened condition, God's hands were in the midst of the circumstances, and He had done something. He had opened whatever door this was to provide them with the relief that they needed. And you and I need to understand that when we go through trials or tragedies or whatever we must endure as we go through this life, God's hands are very involved, and His hands are custom fitting, custom molding that trial just to us. And whatever relief valve that we need in the midst of that time, He opens the door. And no man is going to be able to shut it. No man will be able to alter what He does for us in those times. He goes on and he says here, God will not suffer you to be tempted above that you are able, but will with the temptation also make a what? A way to escape. And again, we don't know what this door was, but that door that God opened, that He wouldn't permit any man to shut or override, that door was their way to escape. And God always provides that for us, so that you may be able to what? To bear it. God will never take you through anything that you can't bear. He'll take you through things that humans can't bear, but He will never take you through anything that you can't bear without Him. And so it brings us great assurance. My life is in His hands. And if my life is in His hands, Jesus promised what? No man can pluck you out. No man can shut that door of escape that God has made in the midst of the trial. And so as we just trust in Father in that way, that does provide us with a great comfort and a great courage to face the future and to go through anything that we need to go through. I love this in Hebrews chapter 4, verse 12. For the word of God is quick and powerful, sharper than any two-edged sword. You'll see why I'm reading these verses in a moment. Piercing even to the dividing asunder of soul and spirit, and of the joints and marrow, and is a discerner of the thoughts and the intents of the heart. Neither is there any creature that is not manifest in His sight, but all things are naked and open unto the eyes of Him with whom we have to do. Now when you read verses 12 and 13, it probably more than likely strikes fear in your heart, right? I mean, we have trouble opening up to each other because we don't want each other to know about the uglies that are in our heart and life. Y'all know what I'm talking about. And so, you know, when we come to church and we're around each other, there's always a certain amount of masking that goes on because there's a fear in there. If these people really knew what I was like or really saw me in one of my bad moments, they wouldn't love me anymore. They wouldn't want to be around me anymore. They wouldn't even think I was a Christian anymore. You ever had thoughts like that? Now translate all of that to God. When everything is naked and opened unto Him. Everything is manifest in His sight. He sees all of the uglies that you try to hide from other people. All right? Now what do you think God's reaction is to those uglies? We don't want other people to see the uglies because we're afraid of rejection. But watch what God's reaction is. Seeing then that we have a great high priest that is passed into the heavens, Jesus the Son of God, let us hold fast our profession. For we have not a high priest which cannot be touched with the feeling of our infirmities, our weaknesses, our faults, our failures. That word touch there is the Greek word sympatheo, where we get sympathy from in the English. And it means that He feels, He bears along with us our suffering, our temptations, our failures, our weaknesses. He knows the feeling. Why? Because He was in all points tempted like as we, yet without sin. You know, as Christmas is coming and we think about the incarnation and God becoming flesh, do you know one of the main reasons for God becoming flesh, other than the sacrifice on the cross, was so that you would have a high priest that could identify with you? He knows what it's like to be tempted. He knows what it's like to doubt and fear. He knows what it's like to be weak in the flesh. He told His disciples, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. And so when we think about, gee, God knows all of this about me, doesn't He hate me? Doesn't He want to reject me and throw me out? How could He want me in His presence when He really sees me for who I am? Well, That's the heart of our Heavenly Father. That's the heart of love. That even though He sees everything you are, He doesn't want to criticize. He doesn't want to scorn. He doesn't want to reject. He reaches out to you and He wants to help. God sees you for who you are. He knows every thought. He knows every emotion. He knows everything going on inside of you. He sees everything you say and do, yet He still loves you and wants to help you. He does not reject you. He doesn't scorn you or ridicule or criticize. Just the opposite of humans, right? Just the opposite of our fears. But see, right in this passage, right after it gets through talking about He knows us, all things are manifest in His sight, He goes on to say, thank God we have such a high priest who feels the pain, who sympathizes with the temptations. He was tempted in all points like as we are. And then He says, verse 16, let us therefore come, how? Boldly. When you have someone who knows everything about you like the Lord does, how can you come boldly? Wow. That's going to take a lot of confidence in His love, isn't it? It's going to take a lot of confidence in His grace. I just pray that we would come to know His love and that the knowledge of His love would cast out all fear. And I pray that we would come to the peace of understanding His grace in knowing that God knows everything about me, yet He loves me anyway. God knows everything about me, yet He still wants to help me. He's still there for me. He's still beckoning me to come boldly to the throne of grace that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. So get it out of your mind that, like humans, we're afraid of them rejecting us if they find out what we're like. Just realize your God is just the opposite. He's there for you. He loves you. And He wants to help you. And He doesn't smack you around or beat you up if you happen to be weak. In fact, not only will He not despise you or reject you when you're weak, but you have the promise that He is in absolute control and He will make a way for you to be able to bear it. He understands the weakness. I put there in the bullet points, we probably covered these points already. God sees and knows us down to the very thoughts and intents of our heart, to the very separation of soul and spirit. Though nothing is hid from God, yet He responds in mercy, not judgment, to His child. He knows and feels our temptation and suffering, and He's moved with compassion to help. He is never moved to criticism or scorn. So just meditate on that passage there in Hebrews 4. Very, very important for us to grab a hold of that, or else we're going to be tempted to give up. I think that's why Paul exhorts the church in Thessalonica this way. He says, now we exhort you, brethren, warn them that are unruly. Make sure that you comfort the what? Feeble-minded, which is me a lot of times when I forget what Terry tells me. Comfort the feeble-minded. See, Terry, you're supposed to comfort me. What's the next one? Support the weak. And I know what Terry's thinking. Well, she's thinking, well, you got to listen to me first. Comfort the feeble-minded. Do what? Support the weak. Feeble-mindedness, it's talking about someone there that's timid, someone there that's anxious or fearful. You don't rebuke them, you comfort them. Support the weak. You don't tell them to give over it. What do you do with the weak? You support them, you help them. And then lastly, you be what? Patient. Why? When we come together as a church family, this is what it looks like. This is what we're supposed to do for one another, because that's how Father is towards us. Revelation chapter 3, verse 7, verse 9. Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. And again, we don't really know the details of what was going on here, but we know that the Jews were oppressing them, the Jews were persecuting them, and God is letting them know, hey, they're not my people, they're not true Jews. I will make them to come and worship before thy feet, and to know that I have loved thee. That phrase there, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet, he's not talking about worship as we worship God. He's talking about the fact of, look, these people have been ruling over you, dominating you, oppressing you, and it's going to come to a place where they're going to be devastated. God's judgment will fall, and they're going to be coming to you asking for help. And to know that I have loved thee, I don't love Jews who act like that. And again, we're not talking about true Jews. We're talking about Judaizers, people that were trying to oppress. Verse 10, because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I will also keep thee from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the earth to try them that dwell upon the earth. And that hour of temptation we understand to be the tribulation that's about to come. And so he encourages them, I'm going to keep you from the tribulation. You won't need to go through that agony. Behold, I come quickly. Hold that fast which thou hast, that no man take thy crown. Him that overcometh will I make a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall go no more out, and I will write upon him the name of my God, and the name of the city of my God, which is New Jerusalem, which cometh down out of heaven from my God, and I will write upon him my new name. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. Going back to verse 11, I come quickly, hold that fast which thou hast. You know, we get so caught up in this life and the cares and the needs of this life and the lusts of this life, and if we're not careful, the spiritual can just slip out of our view. There's a much better place that we're heading towards. This is not our home. We're pilgrims and we're strangers. It says there that we have been born again, 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 4, born again to an inheritance incorruptible, undefiled, and that fadeth not away, reserved in heaven for you. You and I have an inheritance that's reserved for us in heaven. Can't wait to get there. What about you? You should be eager to get there. Right now, we are kept by the power of God through faith unto salvation, ready to be revealed in the last time, wherein you greatly rejoice, though now for a season, if need be, you are in heaviness through manifold temptations. So now we have to go through trials, and right now it's grievous. Right now we're in heaviness, but overcoming that heaviness should be the joy of knowing what's waiting for us in heaven. And you know, the heavenly rewards do make all of the earthly sorrows worth it. Every earthly trial, suffering that we go through will be worth it when we receive that heavenly reward. And we do live in a culture and in a society that demands instant gratification. I want it now. And you know, the Christian life in this regard is not so. The Christian life is waiting for Jesus to come back to take us home. The Christian life is waiting for this inheritance that's reserved for us in heaven. There is a great reward one day waiting for you and me, but there's a requirement for us. He says here in Romans chapter 8, verse 18, for I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. You know, I think that's what he means when he talks about wiping away every tear. The fact that when you receive that heavenly reward one day, it's going to be so wonderful, we can't even comprehend it here in this life, but instantly every tear will be wiped away. Because instantly all of the suffering and pain from this life will be gone. And he says, the sufferings of this life can't even be compared to the great glory that awaits us. And so we're not a people who need instant gratification. We believe that there is a reward waiting for us if we are faithful to the end. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 2, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross. Jesus wasn't going to be instantly gratified. The legions of angels weren't going to come and deliver him. He had a hell to go through. But what got him through that hell? What got him through the hell of the cross? There was a joy that was what? Set before him. And you know, whatever we go through in life, no matter how much we have to suffer, no matter what sorrow we have to endure in this life, if we can keep the joy set before us of one day being home, one day being reunited with loved ones, most of all being with Jesus, being before the throne of God, if we can keep that ever before us, it will give us the strength and the courage to endure whatever we have to endure. The joy that was set before Jesus gave him the courage and the strength to endure the cross. And so if we keep the joy of Jesus, the prize of what's waiting for us in heaven, if we keep it before us, it'll give us the courage and the strength to endure whatever we have to. He says, Hebrews chapter 3, verse 12, "Take heed, brethren, lest there be in any of you an evil heart of unbelief in departing from the living God." That heart of unbelief, that came on the children of Israel in the wilderness when they said things like, God doesn't care, God's not here, God's not going to do anything about it, God's too late, God doesn't love us, why is God letting this happen? That's that heart of unbelief. Take heed lest there be in any of you an evil heart of unbelief, but exhort one another daily while it is called today. When you're in that weakened condition, when you're feeling blue, discouraged, depressed, you need to be in church more than ever before. And maybe not necessarily at this specific location. You need to be around other Christians more than ever before. Because one of the safeguards for you slipping away in unbelief is the fellowship of the saints, being encouraged by one another, being strengthened by one another. Lest any of you become what? Hardened. That hardening is that unbelief. That hardening is where your heart becomes stiff towards God, to where you resent what God is making you go through. That's that evil heart of unbelief. And you become hardened through the deceitfulness of sin, of, well, gee, the heathen have it easier than I do. People out in the world have a better life than I do. And see, that's that deceitfulness of sin that causes your heart to be hardened towards God, where you become resentful for what you have to endure. He says the remedy for that, a great guard against that, is through the fellowship that we have with one another, the encouragement of just being with each other. For we are made partakers of Christ if we hold the beginning of our confidence what? We got to make it to the end, folks. We can't quit halfway through. We can't quit 75% of the way. We can't quit 90% of the way through. We've got to make it steadfast unto the end. Hold the beginning of our confidence. What is our confidence? That our God is a good God, that He's in sovereign control of my life, that He won't let anything happen in my life that's out of His control, that He only means good for me and my family. And He's going to do what's right. And He will always be there in His love and mercy and grace to supply anything that I have need of. That's our confidence. Hold that steadfast unto the end. While it is said, today if you will hear His voice, harden not your hearts as in the provocation. So we are made partakers of Christ if we hold the beginning of our confidence steadfast unto the end. That's why he says back here, he says in verse 11, I come quickly, hold that fast which thou hast. Don't let it slip out of your hands, that no man take thy crown. So as you think about prayer, and as you go to prayer and you seek Father's face and you think about this church in Philadelphia, just think about the sovereignty of your God. There are no accidents and there are no mistakes in His plan, and you are right in life exactly where you are supposed to be. And God knows that you go through times of weakness and doubts and fear, and He doesn't cast you off and He doesn't reject you. He embraces you. He wants to help you, and He bids you to come to the throne of grace where you can find that mercy to help in the time of need. He loves you. He knows every thought that you have, sees every sin that you commit, knows every motive of your heart, and yet he still loves you and is continually reaching out to help you. He wants to be your Savior. He wants to be your Lord. He wants to be your all and all. So let's just trust him tonight as we go to prayer.